She's like, yeah, it was a lot of butt there. Can't believe you'd say something so rude, though, Irish. You're normally nice. All right, so class system continued. We left off last time talking about the king, talking about the nobles. Now we're going to talk about the commoner classes. I'm going to start off with the coolest of the commoner classes, the Pochteca. Now, the Pochteca are really neat because the Pochteca are different than all of the others. We talked about, and Rajvir so wonderfully answered in our Do Now, how Aztec promotion is based on merit. What can you do? And you then move up. Where the Pochteca were not. They were based on heredity. It's the only social class that was. So basically, to be Pochteca, your parents had to be Pochteca, and they were Pochteca because their parents were Pochteca, because their parents, and so on and so forth. And the reason why is the Pochteca were the merchants. Now think about it. This is kind of ingenious. If Jackson is going from city to city, going and traveling for the Aztecs to do trade, he's also the perfect person to be your spy because Jackson's able to go wherever he wants. Everybody wants Jackson there because they want to buy Jackson stuff. They want to get Jackson stuff. And then Jackson notices, oh, it looks like they've got some walls here. They got this many soldiers about. Reports directly to the emperor. So with that, it kind of makes sense that it would only be a certain group that would be able to have these privileges. And because of that, they have their whole own part of the city. They have their own gods and goddesses. It's pretty cool. So yeah, Pochteca. It's even fun to say. It's the best. Now, most people were farmers. There were some craftsmen, people going and making things. So most people were farmers working on the Chinampas, but they did have a large percentage of peasants, about 30%. Peasants were essentially laborers and servants that would go work for the nobles and things like that. But they also did practice slavery. Now, Aztec slavery is going to be very, very different than slavery that we've studied in other places. But we do have to remember, it's still slavery. They're not free. This is not a good thing. But typically, you became a slave because you're either A, a prisoner of war, and you had been sacrificed. B, you're a lawbreaker. So, Eli going and running all those red lights on his tricycle. Or C, being a debtor. Like you go and Hayden goes buys 37 Nintendo Switches, couple of Xbox Series X's, some PS5s, and 39 flat screen TVs to go with it, and then does not ever pay the credit card bill. So, say you become a slave. The thing is, though, you could still own property. You could still own your goods. In fact, some slaves even had their own slaves, which is kind of crazy with this. Yes, because this is... it's almost like you wind up going and becoming more like a peasant at a time. Because you see, slavery for the Aztecs was not for life. And if your parents were slaves and you're born, you're not made a slave too. So this is very, very different than the slavery we just studied with West Africa. So the idea it's not for life. You're typically not treated harshly. You still had your property. And you would eventually, become free. But still, once again, slavery is not a good thing. And anyway, this is thankfully just one of the more benign versions of it we'll see in history. But just to show the idea about promotions based on merit, Itzcoatl, his mama, he became emperor. His mama was a slave. So we see that really you could rise from the ranks still. It didn't matter your parentage. It mattered what you could do. But wait, why weren't the kids slaves? Not that I want them to be, but what? Can you maybe explain that a little differently, Joel? I'm not sure I fully understand.
He means, why were the kids not slaves? And he's saying that he doesn't want them to be, but why were they not?
Just because they didn't believe it was something like you could pass on. Like, because I guess in the end, so we're using the term slave, but it was a very different meaning. So when we talked about our West African slavery and pretty much all other slavery through history, the idea was that like you were property. Whereas here, it's almost more like you are now a servant for a period of time. It kind of reminds me in some ways of an indentured servitude where, for example, when people were coming to the Americas, you know, Iris would say, I want a boat trip to the Americas. I want to escape my homeland. And so she would, but the deal would be for 7 years, she had to work for somebody. So it's almost something kind of similar to that. Whereas Iris became a servant for 7 years, but then after that, she became free and would often receive some sort of pay in the end, although depending on the person, maybe not. You know, Raj, that's a great question. I don't know if there was no jail or not. They probably had some sort of method of detaining people. I don't know if this was the only punishment there was or not. Yes, Roger.
What could an emperor be a slave or a peasant?
You know, I don't have any exact examples of it. The best I have that I knew, Itzcoatl's mother was a slave, but I don't have anything known. It seems like theoretically you could have been born a peasant and did it. I think it would still be hard because even with these promotions based on merit, for people to even notice you or you have the opportunity, you probably had to at least have some nobility or ties to it. But part of the problem too is we have what the Spanish wrote about the Aztecs. The Spanish wiped the Aztecs out. So we don't have too many, and unfortunately also destroyed a lot of what the Aztecs wrote because they saw it as heresy. They were really kind of put off by the human sacrifice thing and like burned and destroyed almost everything from the Aztecs. So we lost a tremendous amount. Good questions, though, folks. Thank you very much. I always love it when you guys ask good questions. Sorry I don't have all of the answers. All right, family life. Now, typically, so Aztec men are going to marry at age 20, just like how the Maya did, and women married at age 16, which is still super duper young, but better than the Mayans' age of 14, better than some places where it's like 12. But marriages were still arranged. So you still didn't get to pick your spouse. Although the Aztecs encouraged, like, if you know, Nalea doesn't like the guy she was arranged with, she's able to drop him and marry someone else. So remarriage was common in there. So it's very different than other societies where it was considered a lifelong thing. One of the things that the Aztecs did practice in, and this is kind of very similar to the Mongols, they practiced polygamy that's when a guy has more than one wife. And you think about the Mongol context and you think about the Aztec context, and they're pretty similar. The men are always off fighting. So statistically, then, men are always off dying. And so the population is going to be skewed where there are more girls than boys. And so that everyone could get married. They had it so that boys could marry more than one girl, which I don't know how you would be able to do Valentine's Day like that because it's hard enough taking care of one. Now, women are going to have a lot of rights in Aztec society, such as owning property, selling goods, having jobs. However, men are still going to have more rights than girls, unfortunately. It's still seen that the girl's primary job was taking care of the home and the children. Men typically did manual labor, farming, building, whereas women did the domestic chores. So pretty standard there. But here's something that's really kind of cool about the Aztecs. They, as far as I'm aware, create the world's first universal educational system. Oh, no, the Aztecs played sports. Yeah, the Aztecs love sports. They had a bunch of games. They played Tlactli, which is a lot like Tato. They had a bunch of games. And why doesn't it say it? I think the sports are on a later slide. That's why. And I know you're gonna read about it too next week. So, but yeah, this is really cool. It doesn't matter if you're a boy, a girl, prince, princess, slave, farmer, you got to go to school, which is really nice. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this is the first universal educational system then. And the thing is, though, so everybody went to school, but they are going to go to different schools. And we'll get to go to those specifics about schools, not manana, Monday. So commoner boys, they're going to go to Topocali, and this is where they're going to learn how to be a soldier, how to be a farmer, those kind of things. Things that would be essentially for commoners. But, you know, if Joel is in Topocali and we realize how incredibly talented Joel is, what a brilliant mind he has, he might wind up getting upgraded to Kalmekek, where he can learn to be a military commander. Whereas, you know, a prince like Mikkel, he's probably going to go train to go become a government official or a priest or a Star Talakli player. Sorry, Joel. Didn't have a lot of options when you're an Aztec. It's kind of like the Mongols, where it's like you got your honor by being a warrior. Sorry, bro. I mean, you are the blade for Pete's sakes. Girls could learn to be priestesses. Girls had their own school too, which I can't remember the Aztec name off the top of my head. But they will, we'll talk about that on Monday. So those are going to be our notes for the day. So I'm going to stop the recording here. Do you have any more